Good afternoon and welcome to a combined first adventure. It's the first time online for Orkney International Science Festival and the first time too for our partners in Foraging Fortnight, which indeed we're going to get underway together just now. In fact, there's several of us here going to assist. My name is Howie Firth. I'm speaking from Elgin, and in Orkney is Julie Rich with a background in environmental and heritage studies. And Julie's speaking from her home, not far away from the Bay of Scale and Skara Brae. Julie, I can picture it now. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Howie.
And what sort of day is it in Sandwich today?
Well, we've got sunshine at the moment. There's been a few showers around, but it's definitely a bit colder. I think the autumn has arrived.
What about farm work? Are the farmers looking pleased or concerned?
Well, yes, the last couple of days there's been a few combines going about, so a lot of the barley starting to get harvested.
That's certainly a good sign. What sort of summer has it been in Orkney? I've been sometimes looking on Facebook and getting various images, sometimes most beautiful sunsets.
Yes, I think we're blessed. Well, I'm on the west coast of Orkney, so we get the good sunsets. So I think we're just saying that it's been a lovely summer, you know, compared to other years, especially with the lockdown restrictions. So we've been quite lucky that we can all get out and about and make the most of the weather.
Well, and indeed our subject with the Foraging Fortnight connections very much about going out and about. And in fact, just before going back to you for your introduction for the opening speaker, I should mention the background of Foraging Fortnight. It developed from the LEADER programme, which helps innovative rural development. It's a collaboration between 5 Scottish regions. The idea came from Forth Valley and Lomond. They had strong support from Murray, Fife and Lanarkshire and, of course, Orkney, which is why we're all here. And the time coincidence with the Science Festival made it a perfect opportunity for collaboration. Scottish Natural Heritage are very supportive as well and part of the partnership. And indeed, as you were referring to then, Julie, thinking about the lockdown, if ever there was an idea whose time has come, I guess it would be foraging, a wonderful way to get out for fresh air and nutrition. And introducing our speaker, Julie, I guess he's the ideal person for the outdoors.
It certainly is. Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted to be co-hosting this session with Howie today. And I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker. Our first talk is The Road to the North by Tristan Cameron-Harper. Tristan has many talents and skills, including a professional ice hockey player. And his love for the outdoors as a Scottish mountain guide and photographer enables Tristan to introduce people from all over the world to the beautiful landscape of Scotland and the islands. And if you want to see some of Tristan's amazing images, you can look at his blog called North. You'll see that on Tristan's hat. And if anybody has any questions during this session, if you would like to just type them into the live YouTube chat, and we'll come back to these at the end of the session. And we hope you enjoy today's talk. And Tristan, how are you getting on in Orkney? Is this your first time here?
This is my 6th time, I believe, but it's my first time where I'm actually experiencing some good weather. So that's a relief.
That's good. I'm afraid we don't have any mountains here for you, but we've got lots of coastline for you to forage.
That's perfect. I'm looking forward to exploring the coastlines and all the ancient sites. So yeah, there's lots to explore here.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it to you now and over to you.
Yes. So if you can show this slide, I've got a few slides here I'd like to share with you all. And this slide is a little bit of a weathered mountaineer look, I guess. This is when I was in California and I was hiking in the mountain region there, and the freckles are shining, and just to kind of get an idea of what I look like. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. So here is this is an image when I was in Alberta, Canada, and I lived in Banff, Alberta for 2 years when I was 15, 16 years old, when I played prep school ice hockey before turning professional. And 2 years ago, I got into mountaineering quite hardcore, and I had obviously still a fond love for the ice and the outdoors. So I just kind of gravitated towards ice climbing and whatnot. And this here is a picture of me climbing in the Bow Valley, finding a nice frozen waterfall that's just outside the wonderful town of Banff.
Tristan, I was going to ask you about ice hockey. How is it that from Scotland you went to Canada and became a professional ice hockey player?
Oh, that's a great question. As everyone does in Scotland, it's either rugby or football or tennis or cricket, and ice hockey is kind of a weird one, right? But so I had a close family friend, and he saw me playing rugby, and I used to be quite a physical rugby player, and I used to always be getting sent off and having to cool down a little bit. So he said, maybe you should try ice hockey because you're allowed to body check, and when you get older, you're allowed to fight. At the time, the fighting wasn't really my cup of tea, but anyways. So I just kind of fell in love with it. He took me ice skating, and then I just gravitated towards just being on the ice all the time and loved to skate. And then he put a stick in my hands, and then I loved to just play with the ball, the tennis ball at the time. And then I started watching hockey more on TV, and then I just kind of fell in love with the NHL, which is the National Hockey League in Canada and America. And so I had this calling at a young age to go across to Canada. And then eventually I got this, I was very luckily, I got this opportunity to play in Canada. I attended a school in Banff, Alberta, and that's where I went to prep school for 2 years. And then it kind of led me into the career of playing professional for 7 years.
That sounds something with great speed, and I can imagine bodies crashing together at considerable velocity.
We'll carry on to the next slide. So here's another ice climbing one. This is in Hordaland in Norway. This was a year and a half ago, and I was with a few friends. I was with 2 climbing friends on this trip, and one of my other climbing friends, who's a sponsored climbing athlete, he had been there a few times, and I'd never ever climbed in Norway, and I'd always wanted to climb. And the place is so accessible. The frozen waterfalls, as if you're in Scotland, it's very hard to find ice climbing routes because a lot of them don't last that long, and it's normally a long trek into the highlands. And you can imagine it's quite heavy gear if you're lugging it all through deep snow. So here's a picture of me climbing a frozen waterfall, and obviously you can see the scale of the waterfall compared to me. I'm probably about 60 meters up there, and I was doing a multi-pitch climb, so that pretty much means you free climb and then you set up a bolt into the ice, and then you climb maybe 1 or 2 meters, and then you set another bolt. So if you fall, you're at a total maximum of falling 4 to 5 meters, and it's quite scary. But at the same time, it's one of those things that it just kind of, it pushes your adrenaline, and it's an exciting thrill all in itself. So we'll carry on to the next slide. So here is this is the town of Rhine in Norway, and this is, as you can tell, the landscape and the structure of this island is just beautiful. It's up near the Arctic Circle, and the weather conditions there are just mesmerizing. It's a stunning landscape, and every corner you take where you're driving, you just want to get out of the car and take these pictures. And you can see all the lovely Norwegian red houses there. And if you look closely, you can see some areas where they hang up the fish when the fishing season's in. And it's just some place I would highly recommend, and a place I definitely want to go and explore a little bit further and more. And Norway is a beautiful place within itself.
That mountain at the back, or maybe even a group of mountains, it just looks like sheer hard rock.
Yeah, the fords in Norway are absolutely stunning. You can drive miles down a ford, and it's just, you feel so small. And I think that's the beauty of being in the mountains. It makes you feel so small as a human being, and you're giving so much to them at the same time, and they give so much to you. And it's just captivating. It doesn't seem real. It's something as if you'd seen a postcard, but then you wonder that when people make postcards, these are the pictures they actually take. It's insane. It's quite a thrilling experience. So yeah. So we'll carry on to the next slide.
Tristan, I was going to ask you, that mountains look pretty serious, like in height anyway. How long would you be out on the ice for, like to go up one of those waterfalls?
So a lot of waterfalls, it depends, because you can get maybe a 500-meter multi-pitch waterfall. So there's some climbs that I've done, and you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's still pitch black out, and then you'd be climbing all day until about 12 or 1 o'clock in the following morning. But because what it is, you normally have a climbing partner and you have like a 70-meter rope, and you don't want to go any longer than a 70-meter rope, purely because obviously the tension and whatnot. So you've got to climb the pitch, and then you've got to set an anchor system, which is a secure system. So it's extra secure, and pretty much you're securing yourself into the waterfall. So you'd have three bolts that go into waterfalls. So it's a triangle, so a triangle shape. So there's really strong at each end. And then you've got to rig the system up, and then you've got to help your climbing friend, your partner, climb up. And then he gets to the station, and you've got to do that again. And that could take anywhere from an hour to 2 hours just doing one 70-meter pitch. So you do get longer climbs than that. And obviously when you're in the higher altitude, it's a little bit more stressful on the body, less oxygen and whatnot too. But most of the climbs that I've been doing are all sea level, or they're sea level up to 1,000 meters. But the longest one I've done is about 600-meter pitch, and that was an all-day kind of job. But it's quite thrilling coming down the ice when you're absolutely down the ice with your head torch on, and it's definitely worth a few beers at the end of the day.
I bet.
So this image is me in the Mont Blanc region, and this was actually near the beginning of my time when I was learning to become a mountaineer. And I thought the best place to learn was in the Alps. And so I flew out to Chamonix and I booked myself on a course. And my climbing partner here, Carl, he's from Colorado, and he's in his late 40s, by the way. So age is not a limit here to anyone that wants to start late. He was starting the same time I was. He's a keen climber, and he's still super keen. So as you can see, I'm crossing over a ridge here. You'll see the peak behind me. The peak's only about 1,600 meters. It's actually not that high. Compared to Scottish standards, it's quite high. But you'll see me, I'm going across the ridge here. And my climbing partner, at the time, my guide in front, he went up ahead, and he was hitting on the snow, because you can see it's very smooth. So there was fresh snow the night before. And if we were to go across that when there was fresh snow, there was possible chances of an avalanche. So we had to make sure when we were going across here to hit the ice in case any loose snow, the top layer had to fall down so we wouldn't get dragged down it. And you can also see the rope that's going right across there too along the ridge. So we'd follow this as a guideline. It's not a secure rope. It's just something to obviously navigate across. In case we do fall, we'll catch ourselves and we won't fall all the way to the bottom. So that just gives you an insight of what it's like when you're being up high in the mountains and the safety precautions involved. Going to the next slide. So this here is actually, I didn't take this image. My friend took this image. He was coming down the mountains, and actually didn't. He was in the Mont Blanc region also the same time we were. And this is a mountain we were coming from called Dent du Gant. It's also called the Tooth Rock. And this is down on the other side of me. There's about a 3,000-meter drop along this ridge, and it's about maybe a foot wide. You can't really see it from that angle, but it's about a foot wide on each side. And if you fall down, it's a pretty steep fall. So just to give you an idea, it's of going along the ridge, but the beautiful geographical structures of the rock there is absolutely stunning, and that's what you really get out of it when you do some of these wild experiences in the mountains.
Tristan, you picked up that word 3,000-meter drop, and I was going to ask you, as someone who doesn't have a head for heights, are mountaineers really born just impervious to height, or is it something that you have to work at to get over?
That's a great question, Howie. I actually get asked that question quite a lot. So, I mean, I think a lot of people will do what there's always one in a million or 1 in 100 people that actually have a natural feel to it. But then again, myself, when I was first starting, I did get that feeling of vertigo. And when you look down to either side, it's like, sometimes it's like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But it's the thrill at the end of the day is what really makes it. But the best thing I could say to people is, well, when you're doing something you love, you kind of get in a state of mind where you kind of forget everything around you and time just disappears. So if you're reading a book, if you're going for a walk along the beach, just even simple things, something you're enjoying, you forget about everything around you. And for me, falling in love with mountains and being in the outdoors, that's the way I felt about it. Everything around me, I just kind of forgot, and I was focused on that exact moment at the present time. And even the scale drop, the steep drops behind me, they didn't faze me at all. Sometimes they would, when I got to a point where I was really struggling to climb, when it was technical and it was challenging. But then I just remind myself that I've got the confidence, I can do this. This is where I want to be. I get so much more at the end of the day. And I think it's just constantly reminding yourself that you have the confidence to do this. And there's a reason why you've put yourself in this situation. And so it's for me, it's always about pushing yourselves person, like physically and mentally, so he can grow as a person, as a human being. And this is what I feel is important for the generation and people around you. You can inspire them and encourage them to do things outside their comfort zones. Not always a case of climbing in mountains, but just getting out sometimes out your comfort zones and embracing the elements of what this beautiful world has to offer. Hope that was a good answer to you, Howie.
I wanted to just go, I know Julie had a question as well, but just before she asked it, could I just follow up on that to say, was that really what took you from ice hockey to mountaineering? It was a kind of call, a feeling for the mountains.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, because when I played professional ice hockey, I had this love, like my 24/7. When I was waking up in the middle of the night, I was thinking of ice hockey. When I was eating my breakfast, I was thinking of ice hockey. When I was with people, I was thinking of ice hockey. And then slowly over time, being in a professional sports world, it's so regimented, and everything where you're playing in team or you're military or something, there's always a system you have to abide by. And I was kind of getting bored of these same routines and patterns of this life. And then on my days off, instead of maybe relaxing or going to the bar and having a beer with the guys or something, or just kind of having fun with the guys, I would find myself in the outdoors, going in the mountains in the Scottish Highlands or someplace near me, going for a woodland walk, going for a wild swim, just doing something that was nature related. And I just started to fall in love with it more. And then I found that the similar love what I had for ice hockey kind of fell into the love for the outdoors. And I felt this connection where I could take control of my own life much more. And just it gravitated towards that. And then over time, I just kind of had these callings to want to do more and more and more and see parts of worlds that not many people get to see. And for me, this is very special. So it's just to carry on with that and just kind of keep embracing nature's elements, because it's beautiful and it's something we should cherish and carry on with our life. Definitely.
Tristan, we've got a question. Like, how do you learn to ice climb? Like, for you, was it just a natural progression from your mountain guiding, like from your winter sessions?
So I think the best thing if you want to learn to get into ice climbing, what I would say is, I think start with the basics. I think go for some winter walking and get used to the elements around you of what it's like to walk in deep snow, on some slippery ice, and just these little things when you're in the mountainous environment. And then from then, if you want to take it to a more serious area of expertise, you maybe hire a guide or go someplace and book yourself in a course where you're properly getting advised by the people that know what they're doing and talking about. So that's what I would say is the best approach to do it. And always start small, then work your way towards the bigger goals. Don't put yourself right in the deep end, because it's something that you could die in return. And you've got to be serious about it, and you've got to have a calling and a love for it. But just baby steps, and then if you keep loving it more and more, it will just gradually progress over time.
Good advice.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So this is another one in the Alps, and this was quite a scary moment for me. This is my first time on the peaks, the pointed pinnacles, you could say, in the Alps. And my guide who took this picture, you see the rope, and you see it's wedged around each peak. So when I was going to cross this ridgeline here, I would always stay on the opposite side of the rope. So if I was to fall the other side of the rope would catch me, so I wouldn't fall all the way down. So it was hooked onto the sides of the peaks there. But this was very scary, because at the time I had crampons on. I wasn't used to navigating in the mountains with crampons. But it was just one of those things where I really had to trust my foot placement and take my time and breathe and focus on myself and focus on where I was at that present moment. And then with the end result being reaching the peak. So it's just really to show the kind of aspects of what it's like when you're being on the pinnacles of peaks there. It's quite gravitating towards, and it's quite scary at times, but it's something that's definitely rewarding at the end of the day.
How do you feel when you're looking over the ridge at all that vastness?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the best thing about one of the best things about mountaineering and being high in the mountains is you always start really early. And seeing the sunrise and the sunset at these times, it's beautiful, and you see the mist coming in, the fogs, and I just had the colors and the textures of the landscape and just everything you would never imagine. And it seems like something that's a fantasy land, but it's not. It's real, and it just makes you realize how beautiful this planet is and how much it is to offer. And that's something that I think people should experience more and more, because it's important that we know these things and see these things to know the truth in them. So it's a different perspective on reality, I would say. Next slide. So this is me very happy after summiting a peak. I'm in a little bit more relaxed environment, and just to show that it's not all death-defying moments of ridge walking and doing all those sorts of things. So yeah, there's always those happy moments when you're laughing with your buddies on top of the peaks.
You know, that's just a wonderful photo. That's one I could look at for a long time, I think, and it's a picture of total contentment.
Absolutely, you know, that's a place where you want to be, and those are the moments when you feel a little bit shaky when you're on the peaks and whatnot, and then you come down to a moment when you find that balance and everything just feels amazing and it fits into place, and then you ask yourself, you know, I'm doing the right thing, you know, this is great.
And just to look at that scene, could you kind of explain where it is again? There's these jagged mountains in the background. You must have come up, well, like in the foreground, you must have come up through the... I'm pointing at the camera, I suppose, but coming up from that area there.
Yeah, so right behind me on the left-hand side, that's where I came up. We were doing it was only, I think it was just about 1,800 meter climb. Not a climb, but we climbed for about 800 meters, and then we hiked up about 1,000 meters. And behind me in the distance is the Mont Blanc massive region, and so it's just to show the grandness and the scale of the Alps and how beautiful they are, and the textures and the colors and the blue. It's just a beautiful scenery. It's like, it looks like something in a postcard. It looks like when you go to one of those things and somebody takes a picture and puts you in front of an image. It doesn't look real, but it is real, which is more special, you know. And so yeah, that is the Alps for you and the Mont Blanc massive region. Next slide. So this here is I was just talking about, this is the peak of Mont Blanc. I had my drone up, and the benefits of being a drone pilot is that you get to take some amazing images. And we were up there, this was about 5:45 in the morning, and we left our chalet, which was at about 3,000 meters, at 3:30 in the morning, and it was a very fast hike, climb to the peak of Mont Blanc. We were the first to summit that morning, which was beautiful, and then we were seeing it above the clouds, and it was absolutely freezing, by the way. Even though the sun was shining, it was very cold, and it was slightly windy, and I could have lost my drone, but I took the chance to put my drone up and take an epic shot, and I think the image I captured definitely is special that I got it. So yeah, it's just to show a perspective of being in the mountains in one of the highest mountains in all of Europe, Mont Blanc. Next slide. So this is just the kind of outfit of what I would wear when I'm doing the hike. This is me, obviously, with my backpack on, and my belt, and my ice axe to my right there, and I've got obviously a rope attached. So we would climb in groups in a pairing. So if I'm with one other partner, we've got a rope attached. So if we're walking along a glacier, if he was to fall or if I was to fall, we can catch one another. And I've got the ice axe there for safety measures if it was on a steep incline or decline, and to hook ourselves into the ice there to make sure we don't fall any further. So just to give you a view of what would happen, and obviously a helmet in case I hit my head. I've got to protect the good old brain. Next slide. So this is obviously, this is Mont Blanc again, and this is coming up one of the glaciers. We passed the Mont Blanc massive region again, and just obviously the perspective of looking right down the glacier. And the sad thing is here, it's even though a beautiful picture, over every year when I go back to the Alps, the glacier just keeps getting lower and lower and lower. And you see all these things in the news, how things are disappearing so fast, but when you actually see it firsthand, you realize how bad it actually is. And this was probably like, maybe when I first started climbing there, it was probably like 20 meters higher than that, and that's not even a lot, but compared to hundreds of years ago, it's just dropping every year, and the rock's getting much more grittier, it's getting dirtier, more pollutants are getting released into the air, viruses and whatnot too, all these things that have been trapped and embedded in the ice. It's not good for the ecosystem, and it's just obviously to show the perspective of how things are fading away so fast.
We were there on a school trip back in the late 1980s, and I think then they were saying that the glacier was starting to, decrease in size, and it was starting to get a lot dirtier. But I'm thinking it'll be a huge difference since then.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge difference, and yeah, I know, and like you said, it's a lot dirtier. Every year I go there, you know, when I first started going there, I really didn't have to think about getting my gear dirty. And obviously, there's places where you get your gear dirty when you're on a glacier, but now it's like there's just so much dirt, and there's things that are just breaking away, and all these rocks are coming out, and it's really sad to see, because you actually are seeing how nature's hurting that much, and it's just really sad. And the biggest thing for me is everything that's trapped in the ice that's getting released, like the viruses that have been there for thousands and thousands of years, and we don't know how they're going to affect the environment, and most importantly how they're going to affect nature. So it's a sad thing to see, and it's something I definitely think we should be aware of. And it definitely, when you're in the mountaineering industry and you're in the mountains, you get to see a different perspective and understand it much more than you would by watching the news, even though that's equally important. Next slide. So this is in Iceland, and I was there about 2 years ago, and definitely want to go back there. It's a beautiful volcanic island, and it's something that someplace I would definitely recommend anyone to go. This is called Elborg Crater, and this is obviously from the volcanic activity. This is, can't remember how old it is, but forgive me for that. But you can hike there, and you can see the kind of trail where you can hike, and this is huge. This just obviously shows the perspective of what it actually looks like. It looks like you're on the moon somewhere, or a foreign planet, and someplace that I think anyone should go that wants to be inspired by the landscape and see how important, and especially the Icelandic people, how they're working with the land, how it's very sustainable, and they're reusable energy. It's good to go to places like this and just see what it is and how it is and what it looks like, you know. So I just want to give you a perspective here. Next slide. So this is another one in Iceland, and I'm sure we've seen a few pictures like this. Obviously from the glacier water and the volcanic water, all the rich minerals are in the water, and the black sands there from the volcanic activity. And a lot of places where you go in Iceland, you'll see beautiful textures and scenes like this, and it's some place that I want to keep going back to, because this is just, it's like the veins of planet Earth, and just showing you there how beautiful it is, and it's just mesmerizing in my opinion, you know. And it's some places just captivating in every single way. Next slide, please. So here is an interesting one, and I think not many people know about this one. So these people were called the cave people, and I have a fascination with caves in general, and I like exploring caves because it's someplace that attracts a lot of the ancient cultures and all sorts of animals and cave art and whatnot too. But in this one, this is now there's a modern family. It's been turned into a museum, and they look after it and they watch it. But back in the day, there was two families that lived there, and they were farmers, and they rented a small plot of land from the farmer that owned a lot of land around it. And so what they did was they stayed in this cave, and they had babies, and they raised a family, and they had their cows and their cattle and everything. And during the winter, they bring all their sheep, and they would have one side of the cave where they keep all their sheep in, and then the other side of the cave, they would stay in that cave the whole winter. And then to keep warm, they would have a hole in the cave where all like the heat from the bodies of the sheep would then come through the other side and would keep the family warm. And so it was a really cool thing to see, and actually understand that there were some people living there. And if you go back there to this day, they do a really good cup of coffee, and it's a really nice insight of and some stories that they'll tell you, which I'm not going to share, unfortunately, because it's part of the tour, which I'd recommend anyone to go into it, and it'd spoil it for everyone. But it's just a cool understanding to see people did live in caves. And yeah, and another thing, it was apparently the monks apparently went there back in the day before anyone lived there, and they were the ones that hand carved in parts of the caves and lived there. So that's a myth, but it might be true. I don't know. But yeah, just a cool perspective. Next slide. So here is I was in Nepal, and this was my first day in Nepal. I flew into Lukla Airport, which is one of the most dangerous airports in the world. Very scary. So if you Google Lukla Airport, its runway is like a quarter-mile long, and you're in the peaks of like 2,000 meters, and you're flying on this little like 10-seater plane, and then you land on this runway, which is super scary. We made it safely, and then the first town you'll see is Lukla. And then I had my camera out because you're just taking pictures of all the mountains, and everything's completely new. All these people with their bright colored clothes. It's just a completely change of scenery. And then this little kid, this was about I think this was about 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm taking a picture of the street, and this little kid comes running up to me, and his mum's chasing after him, saying something. I don't know what she was saying, and he was obviously brushing his teeth, all snorters of face. Come back, come back! Ran out and grabbed my camera, and I just really captured this really raw, authentic moment. I thought was a beautiful moment to share, and it just shows like there's some soul there, and it's just, I love everything about this image and what it represents for the Nepalese people high in the mountains. Sherpa life. Next slide. So this year is a typical, this is Base Camp Everest. So a lot of people talk about summiting Mount Everest, and every year there's about 500 to 700 people that summit Everest, and there's 2 sides to climb on Everest. This is on the Nepal east side. So there was no, so I wasn't climbing Everest. This was a friend of my Sherpas. We luckily got to visit their tent, and we got to see an insight of what it's like being at Base Camp Everest. And at the time they were up at Camp 2. There's 4 camps to Base Camp Everest, and this is Base Camp. So you would stay at Base Camp to acclimatize, and you maybe do some small climbs around to get your acclimatization better. And then you would climb up to Camp 1, and you would do Camp 1 to Base Camp maybe 2 or 3 times to acclimatize, and then you do Camp 1 to Camp 2 2 or 3 times, and then so on up to Camp 4, and then obviously the final day when you get a final window to climb to make the peak of Everest, which is about a 2-hour window, and you only get a couple of days to do it depending on the weather. So this is just the living standards of what it'd be like in Base Camp Everest, and you can see the tents in the background, and obviously the prayer flags which are blowing there. They're scattered all over the Himalayas, and obviously spreading good vibes and good intentions and prayers throughout the whole region, throughout the world. So yeah, and you could also see in this picture, there's a canister there, a blue canister, a dark blue canister. So if you can imagine, that's filled with faces, most likely. So the Sherpas would come, there are no helicopters that are taking the stuff. The Sherpas would take the stuff, and it'd be filled with all this faces, or they'd get their yak. They'd get 2 big barrels and put it to the yak, and then they'd take it all the way back down to the valley to be disposed of correctly. And as you can imagine, this would be happening constantly with different foods and obviously faces and different materials and whatnot coming up to base camp and back and forth. And this is how a lot of Sherpas make a living up that area. So yeah, just an insight what it's like at base camp. Next slide. So this year is in the Sahara Desert. I had a calling. I've been wanting to go to Sahara Desert for a long time, and this was the sunrise about, I think it was about 4 o'clock between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was sleeping on the desert sands at the time because I've always wanted to sleep in the stars. And it was just something I've always wanted to do, just go and explore the dunes. And I went with my friend Chris at the time, and he was going through a hard time in his life at that moment. And so I caught him at this precise moment when he was just walking right across one of the highest sand dunes in the area when the sun was rising, and he didn't actually know I was taking a picture. And it just ended up being a really beautiful moment that I managed to luckily capture. And yeah, it's someplace I'd recommend if you feel a calling to go to the desert. Actually, it's a completely different landscape and something that it's just a beautiful part of the world to explore. Next slide. So this here is beautiful Scotland. This is Glen Etive. This is up in the Glencoe region, and it's a popular glen, and it's great for wild swimming. It's beautiful, lots of mountains to hike. There's not as many midges. Well, maybe this year is too many midges, but it's one of the 3 national parks in Scotland. And Glencoe is just, as you can see, it's beautiful. All the heather surrounding the hills, the greenery and the textures, and someplace I'd recommend, even if you don't want to camp or hike there, just take a drive down the glen and just enjoy the views, or maybe go for a wild dip possibly.
Tristan, I always think as you're driving up through Glencoe, when you see the Buchel, that's just like an amazing mountain, just the whole shape of it. You know, so, just the definition of a mountain.
You see that one in the very distance?
Yeah.
That's the mountain that you would see when you're driving up to Glencoe, what you just mentioned. And that's right before you come into Glen Etive there. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a stunning place to drive by, even just driving to Glencoe and Three Sisters and just stopping and just making yourself a little brew and then just taking in the sights. It's epic. Next slide. So here is this is a Scottish bothy, and bothies are, for anybody's not familiar with them, they're shelters that are darted all over Scotland for emergency purpose. So if you're stranded in the Highlands somewhere and it's really bad weather and you need someone place to crash, if you've got your navigation skills under control and you've got your map at hand, you'll be able to recognize where bothies are, and you can make a quick escape to a bothy where you'll get some shelter, and hopefully there's a fire that's been started by somebody that's also found the bothy, and maybe even a bottle of whiskey if you're lucky. And this is one of the, I like to explore places in Scotland that are kind of off the beaten track. A lot of bothies are part of the Mountain Bothy Association. This bothy is not part of the Mountain Bothy Association. This one is a secret bothy, I like to call it. There's a few secret bothies, and as you can see, if you look at it, there's stones. This is a very authentic bothy. The stones are there's gaps and holes in the stones. There's little notes that people have posted in the little gaps. There's air coming in. There was bottles of whiskey in this bothy, luckily, and there was a fire, even though not well ventilated, but it kept you warm. And there was a raised wooden bed which somebody had nicely built, and it's just a beautiful setting. And if you've got a warm sleeping bag and some friends and some good company, it's a special place to be. And as you can see, if you're under the Milky Way for an evening, it makes it even that much more special. Next slide. So this is a bird's eye view of Coddy Fee, and this is one of my local areas up in the Cairngorms. This is south of the Cairngorms, otherwise known as Glen Clova. And this is just at the end of winter when the snow was starting to melt, and just all the lovely textures and the winding river going up the glen. And this, if you go up the glen, so at the bottom of this picture, this would take you up to 2 Munros called Drieschen Mire, which are great Munros for anyone that wants to get an introduction into getting comfortable in the Highlands and whatnot. And there's a great pathway, and it's a good place to camp, fresh water, and it's just a beautiful area to explore, and it's very accessible. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and this was a picture that I'd been wanting to get for so long, incredible amount of time. This is the Callanash Standing Stones, and Iran's Belt in the distance. I was in the Isle of Lewis for about a week, and it'd been rain, it'd been thunder and lightning, it'd been super windy, and it was just terrible weather. And I had this feeling, I was like, okay, I gotta go out here. There's going to be this window of opportunity. And not even joking, there was about a 20-minute window. I managed to get this picture, and it just turned out to be a very special moment. And it was just it really struck a chord with me, because I was very happy to get this image, as I'd been to Ireland a few times. And these are moments I feel why people want to come to Scotland, you know. And obviously there's lots of other attractions, but people like to see standing stones, and they imagine they want to be under the stars when it happens, to see all the energies align and whatnot. So just a very special moment. I think it's a good way to end my slideshow here with all the images, and I hope you enjoyed seeing the images, folks.
Beautiful images. We've just been sitting back spellbound, and there's been feedback coming in from a number of people who've been enjoying them as well, and using words like inspirational, and the questions too, and you mentioning favourite parts of Scotland. Richard Oakley in Murray wants to put you on the spot with this and say, of all the different parts of Scotland, what is your favourite one?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know how to answer that one. I mean, can I cheat and say the Grampian Mountains? I mean, the Highlands, anywhere really. I mean, the Cairngorms is what I'm most familiar with, and I feel really that's my home, is the Cairngorms, and there's still a lot to explore there. But I mean, it's one of those things. Whenever you go someplace in Scotland where you've not been, it's like you find this new love for the outdoors and this place in Scotland that you've never been, and it's just. I mean, the Highlands really, because I'm always learning something, and it's someplace that it never fails to surprise me. And that's the beauty of Scotland, for being such a small country. It's got so much to offer, and it's yeah. So the Highlands. Can I get away with that?
I think you're allowed that. Julie's picking up some questions. There's quite a number coming in.
Yeah. Thank you for this journey that you've taken us on, Tristan. Kathleen's asking, is there anywhere that you haven't been yet in the world that you would love to go to?
So I've got, I really want to go to Mongolia. Mongolia was meant to happen this year, but unfortunately it didn't happen. As I believe it's someplace that's it's not been as touched by many people traveling there, and I think it's important to go to these places that are not being as touched by humans, and really showcase how important it is to protect these people and talk about their story and share their story with the world. So Mongolia is on my list of places I want to go in the Altai Mountains, and just see people in the just experience their culture and learn. And I've got a calling to go there also. So yeah, it's definitely got to be Mongolia for now.
That would be a great experience. And what would you say has been your hardest climb, or do you think you've not had that yet?
I mean, there was a climb in the Alps I mentioned here called Dandugan. My French is not good, sorry. And that was a moment when I was having a few breakdowns. Had to stop, and my guide at the time, Emeric, he kept saying "Allez, allez, allez, allez." And meanwhile, he's over the other edge where I can't see him, and there's this rope, and he's ahead of me, and he's a really good climber. And now this is when I was really getting into it, and I'm just like panicking, panicking, trying to keep composure. I'm like meditating. I'm like, breathe, relax. And then, I got through it, and all these thoughts and emotions, it was like just this ball of emotions and thoughts were going through me at all the same time. And I would say Don de Gaunt in the Alps, yeah, that was a very challenging technical climb, and but more mentally challenging than anything.
And you found time to meditate when you're climbing?
Yes. I've actually got I've actually got a video I took off my drone when I reached the peak, because my guy at the time, Emeric, he was like, okay, we're going to sit on top of this peak, and we're going to relax, and we're going to enjoy our sandwich, and we're going to have a cup of coffee, and we're going to take in all the sights, and we're going to just take it easy, because you were freaking out a little bit. So yeah, it was I've managed to make some videos, and I've not lost my drone to date, so thank God.
Someone actually asked about the drone. How does it work with the thinner atmosphere, like the higher altitudes?
So the highest I've climbed is up to 5,000 meters. I've not been anywhere above to 6,000 to 8,000 meters, but there is certain propellers. I know you can also alter the motor to adjust. There is some people that have got the same drone as me, and they've tweaked it a little bit to be able to fly a little bit higher. I mean, it's the same as helicopters. The helicopters, I think, there's helicopters go up to 7,000 meter peaks, but I think that's just the limit, and that's pushing it, and that's really pushing the engine. So it's the same way for the rotor speed and the drone. Also, you've got to tweak it a little bit and hope for the best, and hopefully it just catches the right type of the air. There's a hot air maybe spiral that you maybe catch on the hold of, and then it might take it a little bit higher. So yeah, it's just trial and error, really.
There are so many more questions coming in, Tristan, and suddenly the time has gone by and we're almost out of time. So I'll go over to Julie, first of all, to express thanks on behalf of us both and a lot of other people who've been listening and enjoying this so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Tristan, for that journey. We could listen to you all day. And what an interesting discussion there's been from people, and sadly we've not had time to answer all the questions, but maybe we'll see you again at the Science Festival. And thank you to everybody that's been online and for your participation.
And we'll have, in fact, Tristan, I think 3 of our lunchtime live streams, our Pity Kirk lunches at 1 o'clock. You're going to be paying a visit and joining us there and telling us about your travels. So thank you indeed. And just before we round off, I should say that at 3:30, 3:30 today, we're going over to Murray, where Dan Puplett is going to take us foraging by hedgerows and out to the Murray coastline. So in the meantime, from Julie and Tristan and me and all the team with the Foraging and the Science Festival, goodbye and thank you.